All right, today the topic is rural internet. What exactly are your options? Let me just start off with my situation, which is probably like many of you if you're looking at this video. I live in a very rural county in Ohio. Where I live, there are no cable lines. Some streets don't even have telephone lines yet. We actually have telephone, but we don't even have DSL out here. There's nothing, just telephone and electric. So I don't even use our telephone lines. We have a different solution for telephone that I'll cover in the video. But out here, there's just electric. So like many of you, when we moved here 2 years ago, I needed the internet. I was not prepared to do without it. So doing research led me to basically only a couple very limited options. First option, which a lot of people end up using, is satellite internet because you can pretty much get it anywhere. And it's just like satellite TV. They come out, they install a dish on your house. There's an indoor router, makes a Wi-Fi connection, etc. The other option is some type of wireless internet. Some places in the country are lucky enough to have like large Wi-Fi networks. Other places you can use the cellular network as a home internet connection. In my situation, after doing a lot of research, the Wi-Fi, the cellular rather, was the best option, and I'll tell you why. I have a home security camera system, and to use it, it required what's called a public IP address, which means that I could reach my internet from the outside and actually get into my network. And to do that, you need a public IP address. A lot of wireless internet providers, including satellite and all cell companies on 4G, give you what's called a dynamic address, where it's long story short, it's behind like a firewall, and you can't get to it. So that honestly left me with only one option at the time, and that was to go the wireless route and to use Verizon. And the reason I chose Verizon is because they have something called LTE Internet installed. So with Verizon Internet installed, it's very similar to satellite, except you don't have a lot of the negative drawbacks. Unfortunately, Verizon does limit you to either 10, 20, or 30 gigabytes of data a month. And the prices start at, I believe it's around $60, $65 for 10 gigabytes, $90 for 90-ish range for 20 gigabytes, and then 130 maybe, 140 for the 30 gigabytes. It's pretty expensive. And if you go over your allotment, you are charged per the gigabyte automatically. So this really is not a solution for people who like to stream video or anything else. But in our situation, we decided that at the time, 2 years ago, we would deal with it. We had the 20 gigabyte plan for $95 and some change, and we just couldn't do a lot of YouTube videos, Netflix, all that was gone. It was mainly for browsing the internet, and any kind of online video, we would use our cell phones. We had a pretty decent plan through AT&T, another 20 gigabyte plan that we could watch a little more video occasionally on our cell phones. So the good thing about Verizon, like I said, was when you have the LTE Internet installed, and this is not the case for a regular Verizon 4G LTE, you have to have internet installed. They will give you a public IP address. Now, it will change, so you'll have to use a dynamic DNS service, but for someone like me who has security cameras, or if you're certain other type of IT thing needs that you might need to get into your network, this was important. So if you don't do a lot of video streaming, this may be the perfect solution for you. I kept hoping the last 2 years that Verizon would enhance their plans and give us more gigabytes, but they never did. And but overall, I have to say that I'm impressed with Verizon. So here's the external antenna for the Verizon. As you can see, it's just mounted to the back of the house. And there's a cable that runs down, just like if you had satellite. It goes into the basement. Okay, from the antenna outside, it comes to a power inverter, kind of like satellite, that puts power over the coax cable to the antenna outside. Runs up along the ceiling and down into the Verizon wireless router. So I've had this running for the last 2 years. I did purchase the optional insurance, which luckily I have not needed. And I can honestly say that in the last 2 years, I have never had an outage. I've only had to reset the modem a few times. It's been very stable, very reliable, and honestly has never failed me. With Verizon, they do not offer a telephone. You cannot plug your telephone lines into that. So what we did is plugged a NetTalk Duo right into the Verizon router, and I've had this for years, which just plugs into the telephone system in the house, and all of our rare home phone needs are served by this NetTalk Duo, which has actually also served me well. I know some people have had bad experience with them, but it has also never been out, and the phone always rings when someone calls, and when it works. So, I would say the main drawbacks to the Verizon LTE Internet installed are the fact that obviously it's dependent on your Verizon coverage, but you are limited in gigabytes to 10, 20, or 30, which, let's be realistic, if you watch any kind of online videos these days, that's not enough to do anything. So Verizon really isn't serious about internet yet for the home, but this is still kind of a infant stage. I would say it's still a ton better than satellite, and I'll show you why here in a second. So anyone who has satellite knows that the speed advertised can be decent, but there's a thing called latency. And what latency is how long it takes for, once you hit enter on the web page, how long it takes to make the trip, the packets to make the trip. But the good thing about the Verizon versus satellite is, even though they're about the same price, the Verizon is much, much faster with low latency. So we'll do a speed test with the Verizon setup here to show you what your average speed is, or in my case. Okay, so there's a speed test. Ping time under 100 milliseconds, that's great. Sometimes satellite can be 500-600 milliseconds. Download 4.8, upload 4.06. That's about average. I usually get more like 8 megabits per second download, but it's between 5 and 8, and that's what Verizon advertises. And honestly, you can stream HD video at this speed. It doesn't seem that fast, but the HD streaming does work in this case. Alright, just to see that it does work, I'll play this video here. Make sure we put it in HD. Let's see. Alright. So see, no problem with playing HD video at that speed. Doesn't really buffer at all. Let's skip ahead here. Just a little bit of buffer. Not a big deal. So that's Verizon. So benefits, once I said, low latency, stable connection, allows you to connect to your security cameras with a public IP address. So it's a win as far as that's concerned. But after 2 years of being here, I'm coming up on the end of my Verizon contract, and I think now you can get it without a contract. When I bought it, it was a 2-year contract, and the equipment was free, just like a lot of plans. I've started looking for something else, and after looking pretty hard, I finally found something called 4GAS. So I found the 4G Antenna Shop, and I read a lot of reviews online about it, and they've all been positive. So they had a special going on at Black Friday special, so I decided to give it a shot. And what I signed up for at first was, what they advertise is unlimited rural internet for $65 a month. Now, if that sounds too good to be true, it kind of is. So let me explain. They have kind of a solution. They don't really advertise it, but they have a solution for you as long as you have a cellular carrier that comes in good at your place. And in my case, I'm pretty lucky. I live relatively near a state highway, so there are antenna towers from AT&T and Verizon within 5 miles of the house. And T-Mobile just recently expanded into this area. Their LTE, at least. So I do have options out here. The first one I went with through 4GAS was called their Cricket plan, I guess you could say. And what that is it uses a Cricket SIM card, which is like a prepaid AT&T derivative, and it uses AT&T towers, and it's limited to 8 megabits per second download if you're on LTE, or I believe 4 if you're on like the H Plus network. So that sounded pretty good. I said 8, well, I'm getting no better than that with Verizon. And the key is it was completely unlimited. There was no strings attached, completely unlimited. So I gave it a shot for about a week. And what I found was that there was a little bit more latency, because everything, when you're on Cricket, everything you do is running through a server to limit your speed on the AT&T network. That way you're not, and you're at a lesser priority than AT&T customers. So the overall experience wasn't that good. There was a lot of buffering. I thought 8 megabits per second, I should easily be able to watch HD video. Most of the time I couldn't watch HD video. If you're someone who just watches a lot of standard definition video and that's good enough for you, I could recommend that plan. It's good enough to browse Facebook. It's good enough to download updates for your computer, etc., etc. Now, like I talked about earlier, if you have home security cameras, it's a no-go. It will not work for your direct connection. But I have another way that I'm getting around that now. So, Cricket plan. Worked pretty good. Wasn't fast enough though. I want to be able to watch HD video. So what did I do? So I called and talked to the folks at 4G Antenna Shop. They were very, very, very pleasant to deal with. I ended up switching to the T-Mobile plan, and they gave me a test SIM card because they weren't sure that T-Mobile would come in good enough in my area. He sent me the SIM card, and I put it in my modem. And speaking of, that's kind of the difference. When you go with this company, you have to buy equipment. And you can buy it through the 4G antenna shop. And they have different options. They have, most of them are just different wireless modems. The one I went with was this here, this MoFi 4500. And it's the same price whether you buy it through 4G antenna shop or if you buy it directly from MoFi. And I found that was to be pretty nice that the 4GAS company, they're not trying to make any money on you. They're selling it to you at cost. And they're sending you whatever SIM you want that will work in there. And this modem will work with Verizon. It will work with AT&T. It will work with T-Mobile. The only one it won't work with right now, I believe, is Sprint. But that's pending. It's supposed to work with all of them before long. It's extremely fast, and it works great. Now, like I was saying, Cricket wasn't quite fast enough for me, so I wanted to speed up. So I changed to the T-Mobile plan, and it's actually been pretty good. What they advertise with the T-Mobile plan is, in theory, they say it's unlimited, but it's actually not. How it works is, and they do say it quite a bit on here, you have 26 gigabytes of unlimited high-speed data. After 26 gigabytes, you are deprioritized on the T-Mobile network. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that if you live out in the middle of nowhere like me, and you have an uncongested tower, you probably won't notice. And things will continue as normal. And you'll be able to continue watching high-speed or using your high-speed data, watching HD video, etc. However, if you try to use this in a city where there's a lot of people, you just got bumped down on the priority list. So you could theoretically slow down to 2G speed, which is completely unusable. So this is a gamble. Once again, to me, comparing it with the Verizon plan I just had, it was still a heck of a lot cheaper. And at the minimum, I got 26 gigabytes of high-speed data, which is 6 more than the 20 I had for 95. So it was a win no matter what. So I said, we'll try it out. All right, so if you live in an area with a good signal strength, you won't have to do what I had to do. In theory, you could just put the router on your desktop and you're ready to go. Out where I live, the closest cell phone tower is about 3 miles away. And actually, to get a good signal, it was even further. So I had to install an exterior antenna. And I ended up using 2 Wilson 10 dBi cellular antennas. And used LMR 400 cable, dual cable runs, all the way down the front of the house. And they run into the basement. And this proved to be quite an expensive initial investment because the antennas were almost $50 each and the cable itself was about $120 for the dual run. You do have to aim these antennas at the cell tower that you're using. They are directional. There are non-directional antennas that you can also use if you're closer. And the reason there are 2 antennas is because the router uses dual antenna ports to get a better signal. So from the outside, the antenna wires run in to my MoFi 4500, which I have mounted here on the wall next to the Verizon router. So your antennas come in. These are your Wi-Fi antennas. If you, like I said, if you're in an area with really good coverage, or if I didn't want this in the basement, there's another set of antennas that plugs in here instead that will be your cellular antennas. But it is nice, it's very versatile. Just put the SIM card right in the side of the router. I've got my exterior antennas connected. Plug it in and then go through the setup utility to set up your service. It all works very well. So obviously there's options. If you don't feel like doing all of that, you can even get something like a little tiny hotspot like this, Wi-Fi hotspot, that can support multiple connections. This one happens to be a T-Mobile one, but And you can buy these through the 4G antenna shop also. So here we are back at the speed test. Now we're connected to the 4G AS T-Mobile service, and we'll go ahead and do this test again, see what we get. So as you can see, very impressive. Almost 25 megabits download, about 8 or 9 upload, 61 millisecond ping time. Very good result. I've had nothing but very positive experience with the T-Mobile service. So I guess you say, well, that's great. What's the downside? There's always a downside. They also advertise that unlimited HD streaming. It basically piggybacks on T-Mobile's Binge On feature, where supposedly you can watch unlimited streamed videos from places like YouTube, Netflix, Hulu. There's a whole list of them, and it will not count against your 26 gigabytes of data. I have found that claim to be completely false. I have an app on my tablet here that lets me check my amount of data used on my account. And every time I watch a video, anything I do adds to that data. Doesn't matter where I stream it from, whether it's YouTube, Netflix, etc. It's adding to that data. In fact, last month I hit the point where I would have been deprioritized. And like I said, I didn't notice anything, but you might. So in this case, it is much better than when I started with Verizon, but it's still not perfect. Now, internet speed's great. Out here, there's not hardly anybody on T-Mobile, so I don't have any problems with it. It's just they advertise the unlimited streaming and even the unlimited HD streaming, and I found that not to be the case. I'm not sure if it's an issue with just my setup, but I'm running my setup in the way that 4G AS says I should run it to work, and it doesn't work. So, just an honest, unbiased review. I love the company and what they offer, but so far in my experience, it has not worked the way it was supposed to work. So what I'm going to do is try one more thing through the same company, 4G Antenna Shop. I'm going to try another unadvertised plan that they have, which is called the AT&T Blast plan, and it is 100 gigabytes for about $95 a month. Guaranteed 100 gigabytes, same thing, after 100 gigabytes you're deprioritized. Instead of using T-Mobile, this uses the AT&T network, which I have even better coverage with out here. I can use the same router, just take the T-Mobile SIM out, put the AT&T SIM in, reconfigure the APN settings on the router, and I'm in business. And luckily for me, the AT&T tower and the T-Mobile tower share the same tower, so I don't even have to re-aim my antenna. The reason I know this will work even better is I took the AT&T LTE SIM card out of my phone to test, popped it in here, and I had 50 to 60 megabits per second downloads and just lightning quick browsing performance. It was incredible. Better than any home internet I've had out here. So hopefully that works even better. I know that I will have a guaranteed 100 gigabytes a month, which will be much harder for us to go through. And they also advertise with that the unlimited streaming. Whether or not it works, we will see. But I know I have a 100 gigabyte plan for $95 a month. So for the same price that I was paying for the Verizon LTE installed, which gave me 20 gigabytes at 5 to 8 megabits per second, I will get 100 gigabytes at about 50 megabits per second. So definitely more options with this new company. Now, I mentioned quickly before, for those of you that also have security cameras, that I had another solution. Well, originally I had this Alibi DVR. And Alibi is just a generic or a rebranded Super Circuits brand for an HIK Vision DVR. Except you don't get the most important feature that I found out I needed, which is they have a cloud DVR setup. And so basically, long story short, in order to use my DVR on my new internet network where I don't have the public IP address, I had to buy a new DVR. And I bought this HIK Vision brand DVR. And the reason why is because of their cloud service. It allows me to use the same app on my cell phone to pull up my cameras. And without getting too technical, I don't need a public IP address because this maintains a connection to the cloud, essentially. And when I need to view my cameras, it is able to break through that barrier that the cell phone company puts in place and stream my cameras to me. Without getting too technical, because it works. I've tried it, it works great. So the cloud DVR was the solution to being able to use my DVR, where on a traditional style DVR, which doesn't have to be this brand, all the DVRs out there that let you use remote access require that you have that public IP address and you can connect directly to the DVR. So hopefully this video was informative to some of those of you out there who may be in my situation that don't have an option for wired internet and are looking for a solution. If you found the video useful, please like and subscribe. And any questions you may have, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to get back to you with any help that I can provide.